Is Dylan Cease officially washed up? Is Blake Snell back to his Cy Young form? Lock on in as Matt and I help you navigate these challenging start-sit decisions on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here as always with my co-host, partner in crime, my best friend, the second best fantasy baseball player I know, besides myself, Matthew Ane.
I think the first best is the right one, but it's fine. I'll let it slide for now.
Guys, if you can find us on all social media platforms. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can throw us a little 5-star rating and review. We truly appreciate it, and we are available on all social media platforms. Just search for Locked On Fantasy Baseball and we'll be there. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell and subscribe you to the channel, and gives you a notification every time that we drop a new episode. And once again, if you're on the YouTube, please like and comment because we love to talk fantasy baseball with you. A championship team is all about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for the parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay's guaranteed fit. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions may apply. Make sure you check out eBay Motors. And guys, I'm sorry. I got a little something in my throat there. But guys, lock on in, fantasy baseball fans. It's decision time today. Let us be your team's secret weapon as Matt and I help you maximize your team's potential while we dive into the murky waters of start and sit decisions on today's episode. All right, Matt, that's about enough for me right now. So, Matt, who are we talking about starting? Or I think we're going with sitting players first. Who do we got?
Let's talk about Mr. Dylan Cease. My bold prediction, not to take a victory lap, but I guess I should have cued some Rocky music because I'm a champion here in my bold prediction a month in. With Dylan Cease taking an absolute duty in his big boy pants with the season going, 40 innings pitched, two wins, 49 Ks, the only thing good about his game. And a 5.58 ERA with a 1.51 whip is, really ugly. And quite honestly, I do not trust him to roll out each and every week. It looks like he's going to get the start against Houston since he pitched yesterday, which is Monday for us. So he'll probably get the start against Houston. And I really don't want to roll him out against that because he couldn't handle Kansas City, couldn't handle Minnesota, couldn't handle Tampa Bay, couldn't handle Tampa Bay again. It's kind of just looking real bad, and I really am going to just sit him for the time being unless there's like a layup of a matchup like the Oakland A's at Oakland A's or, Cincinnati at, Chicago. Other than that, I'm not really trying to roll out Dylan Cease, but he's not an outright drop for you guys. So, I'm not saying drop the kid because you could probably trade him before having to drop him. And you might want to do that, but that's a whole nother thing that we would do for, worryometer, but I'm about a worryometer of a 7 if we had to talk about it. But that's Dylan Cease, everyone.
Yeah. I mean, Dylan Cease is definitely worrisome. The fastball velocity is down about a mile per hour from last year. The hard hit rate is up. He's actually getting, if you account for every pitch he's thrown this season, about half of them, that have gotten hit have been hit hard, which is not good at all. The batting average against, guys are hitting 263 against his fastball when last year they hit 218. Last year, batters hit 128 against Dylan Cease, the slider. This year they're hitting 228, so it's way up. I don't really like a lot of the peripheral stats. It's not something we really get into around here, but things just look really, really bad for, Dylan Cease right now. I will say this, though. If you go back and look at Dylan Cease's 2021 season, where he had a 3.91 ERA across 32 starts, 165 innings, 226 strikeouts with a 1.24 whip, I would expect him to be a lot closer to that than what he was last year when he was in the race for the Cy Young. He actually finished second. So there will be better times for Dylan Cease. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's going to have a 5.5 ERA all year. I don't think the whip is going to stay at a 1.51, but he's not going to be the Cy Young caliber player he was last year. So if you drafted Dylan Cease as your ace, I think you're in a bit of trouble. I think you could try and package Dylan Cease with, a mid-tier bat. Well, we talked about buying low and selling high. Yes, they get you a Corbin Burns, maybe an Aaron Nola. And I think that is a better move than, standing pat here with Dylan Cease. Maybe after a couple of good starts, you can make that, move. But let's move on to our next guy here. And I am way, way more pessimistic on this guy than Dylan Cease, and that's Nick Lodolo. Oh, man. I tried to warn you guys. I really, really was like off of Nick Lodolo this offseason. I know there was a lot of people that were drafting him, as like a top 30, 40 starting pitcher. I think I had him ranked in like the mid to low 50s, maybe even wound up being around 60. And he's just been horrible, man. 34 innings for Lodolo, 47 Ks, 6.29 ERA, and a 1.75 whip. Yeah, I think there are better days for Lodolo, but he's just not good. He got gave up a bunch of runs against Oakland, on April 30th and May 6th, his last start against the White Sox. He gave up a bunch of runs, had a 1.91 whip, only struck out 3. They're actually pushing Lodolo's next start back to, it looks like Saturday, which is going to be against Miami. But I'm not starting him. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm really not throwing him out there. It's been really, really bad for Lodolo besides the strikeouts. I mean, I tried to warn you guys. That's the best I could say here with Nick Lodolo. Honestly, in shallower leagues, 10, maybe even 12-team leagues, I might even be looking to drop him for, if there's a hot hand, another one of these young kids gets called up. I can see reasons to drop him.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I am super disappointed in Nick Lodolo. Everybody knows he was my guy going into the season. He's another one who pooped in their big boy pants, but I did not see this coming based off his performance last year. For me, he probably is a drop. I really wouldn't even start him or considering even having him on my team unless I'm in a 15-man league or plus, because that's where you just lose out. And when's his next start time? I don't remember if you said. Is it this
Saturday? Week? I did say they're actually pushing him back.
Okay.
They pushed him back to Saturday.
So if you're down going into the weekend in Ks, that would be the only time I would consider starting him. Other than that, if your ERA is intact and you're having a good week and you don't need the Ks, then I would he is a 100% sit. Other than that, I would just let it go here. But yeah, Dom, I'm going to hand it right back to you because you got somebody wonderful to talk about here.
Yes, sir. Our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace, transforming fans into owners, with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. So Rare recently partnered with MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez to serve as brand ambassadors. Both are featured in So Rare's current brand campaign and will engage with the So Rare community throughout the season at MLB events. Head to SoRare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's SoRare.com/lockedonMLB to start playing today. And guys, you want to make sure that you get out there and, play So Rare. As I mentioned, you can get win rewards such as going to these MLB events and meeting Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez. There's memorabilia available and much, much more. Check out So Rare today.
Yep.
We also want to thank our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Be sure to look out for a new episode tomorrow featuring players to stash and add to your watch list. And also make sure you stay locked on for the full episode because we're going to transfer from sit players to start players featuring Sandy Alcantara, Blake Snell, and Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, buddy. All right, Dom, thank you for that nice presentation
Yes,
there.
sir. Thank you.
Would have read it much better than I can because I have a reading level of first grade. My 1-year-old probably reads better than me. But anyway, let's move on here. Let's talk about my boy Joe Musgrove here. So he's a case of the scaries. He's giving me the willies coming off this injury, but I'm not really worried about him long term. I'm really just worried about him going into this week.
Yeah.
He's going up against the Dodgers. It looks like it's his next start, which could be Friday or Saturday. It just doesn't show for me. But if I had to take a guess, since she pitched on Sunday,
I think it's Saturday.
Right. So again, he's one of those, same thing I would say with Lodolo. If you're down in the K's category, is probably where I'd be comfortable rolling Musgrove out. But his last start, he was able to handle the Dodgers. So, I mean, he's like in a pinch kind of type guy. But ultimately, if you could spare sitting him, even, spare it and you're having a great week in pitching, then I'd probably put him on my bench and just call it a day and just play it safe. But Joe Musgrove, this could be his get-right weekend, his 2 starts against the Dodgers. If he does turn this around, we're going to be singing a much different tune next week on the next start set. He probably won't even be on this because he'll just pretty much be a sit until he gets blown up again type deal. But Joe Musgrove, you know what? It's about a 70-30 sit for me.
Yeah, see, be honest with you, when I was coming up with some of these names, I don't think I deep dived enough on Musgrove. I didn't realize that his last start was against the Dodgers. And, he does get the Dodgers again, but this time it's at home for the Dodgers. It might just be a case of one more time. If you need the start, by all means, throw Musgrove out there. But if you're in a position where maybe you're leading in ERA, you're leading in WHIP, you got a nice margin in the strikeout department, just keep him on the bench one more time just to be sure. Just to be sure that we got, old Joe Musty back. And, if he goes out there and he dominates again, he's in a must-start position once again. But it is a little bit of, murky waters here with Musgrove as, he got lit up his first 2 outings against San Fran and Arizona. 2 teams that aren't, absolutely dominant teams. Arizona is not a bad team. But, those are teams that he should have been going out there and dominating against. We know he's just coming off the injury. But, be a little cautious with Musgrove. He could get right back into that must-start territory with one more good start here. Let's move on to, one of my bold predictions that started off looking good but has now turned to looking pretty bad. And it's Andrea Gimenez. Man, I was so excited for him, coming into the year. His first couple of weeks, he looked very, very good. But he has, really, really been slumping of late. Let's talk about, Gimenez's last 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks for Gimenez have been pretty bad with only 3 runs, 1 home run, 3 RBIs, batting 167 over his last 42 at-bats. I think he's going to, I'm going to sit him until further notice. He goes up against the Angels. They got a couple of good pitchers there in his next series. I think if you might not have a better option at second base right now, but if you do, I would say just sit him down for a little bit, wait till he gets right. He's been hitting 6th and 7th in that Guardians lineup that hasn't been really that as good as expected to be. I love Gimenez. As I said, I think he rights the ship at some point, but right now, I'm sitting him. I'm sitting him for a couple of days, a couple of weeks until I see some progression from him.
And I completely agree. There is not much to say on him. If you can sit him, sit him. If not, you're pretty much stuck. And it is what it is. There's pretty much no second base options on the waiver wire. So if you don't have a backup, I'm sorry. It is what it is. All right, let's move on here. Let's talk about Mr. Alex Bregman. Another tough pill to swallow based off of the fact that where we all had to draft him in the drafts and being that third base is pretty fugly right now. So his last 2 weeks have been atrocious with only 5 runs, 1 home run, 5 ribs, and batting 116 through 2 weeks. It's utterly putrid. I'm just like, Yo, what are we doing here, Briggs? I mean, do we need to start slamming trash cans in the stands here for you just to get some fantasy value out of you? It's really brutal. With him hitting 205 on the year, it's really not looking bright. So he's one of these names, though, that you might be able to move and try and just be like, hey, listen, like, you got a third base. Let me get your, like, mediocre third baseman. I still think they'll be getting an upgrade and just let go of him. He's not a dump, but if you can spare not starting him, I would not, because quite honestly, he has one more game against the Angels, and then he has 2 starts against the White Sox. Even though we've talked smack on Lance Lynn and Dylan Cease at this point, I still just don't feel like he's going to do much against these guys, being that he's in such a slump. I would rather ride that out with somebody else if I could.
Yeah. I mean, Bregman, honestly, I was a little bit higher on him. I know Matt kind of called, what Bregman's doing so far. I wasn't a huge fan of his. I had a little bit more optimism after Bregman had the monster second half last year. I thought he was going to continue it into this season. He has not done that at all, with a 205 batting average on the year, only 4 homers. 16 RBIs aren't really too shabby, but, and the 20 runs look all right. So the counting stats are not bad. He doesn't really steal bases. So, just sit him down. Sit him. If you have a better option at third base, you have, so even play the hot hand at third base right now until, he gets it back. I don't think he's a drop. I mean, you really can't trade him for too much at the moment. So I wouldn't really, sell low on him. But, Bregman will be better. He's still only 29 years old. It's not like he's, super old yet. He will be better. So once again, same situation with Jimenez here. Wait till he gets a little bit hot, then you get him back in your lineup. But for now, I'm sitting Alex Bregman. Let's talk about, so a lot of people's number one starting pitchers coming into the year as we transition here into the start, segment of this episode. And, we have a lot of great names coming up for this segment. So make sure you lock on in for all of it. Follow up and listen to the end. Sandy Alcantara is back, guys. He's back where he needs to be. I'm not worried about him at all. I know Matt and I talked about him a couple weeks back and told you, don't stress it. He's going to get back to where he is. He goes out against the White Sox on May 7th, 8 and a third innings, 9 strikeouts, gave up a run and a 108 whip. Guys, he's back. This is what Sandy Alcantara does. The reason that I want to talk about him, though, because his numbers on the season still don't look great with the 4.53 ERA, 1.21 whip. His K per 9 is right where it is, just usually right under that K per 9. That's where Sandy usually lives. And he gets Cincinnati on May 13th. And guess what? It's not even in Cincinnati. It's at home. It's a must start Sandy Alcantara. If you were benching him, over his last couple of starts where he, wasn't doing too good, Sandy is a must start. He's a top 5 starting pitcher in all of baseball. Not really too much else to say about Sandy, but, if you bought low on him, congratulations, like my brother Matt did. And I think there's still a tiny, tiny chance to, buy lower on him than normal, because maybe people just see those numbers and they're still a little bit worried. But I think he's going to go out against Cincinnati, complete game shutout. I'm calling it now.
Yeah, I mean, since he has been playing like absolute doo-doo, so I could totally see that outcome, and especially with Alcantara pretty much getting some fluffer games to get his confidence back. Austin Powers, I got my mojo back, baby. Type thing. You know what I'm saying? That's my best Austin Powers impression, I guess. But yeah,
it's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought so myself. And I think that he's back. We're gonna see it, and Alcantara is gonna go and be that guy for us. But let's move on here. Let's talk about somebody else we liked on this podcast, Mr. Blake Snell. Here's the deal. He's had about 1, 2, 3, 4 games that I felt very comfortable with him in a row, that I was like, okay, you know what? He's kind of working his way back. The only downside is it's the Dodgers on May 12th, which is Friday. So it makes me a little hesitant, being that it's the Dodgers, but he's been able to handle himself. His last start against the Dodgers is why he's on this start list, where he was able to put up 6 Ks, keep the ERA down to 3, and a .67 whip. That's the stuff we're looking for from Blake Snell. I think that, he may be hitting it, making a turn here for the better, and the trend is looking up for Blake Snell. So he is a start for me going into the weekend. And before I let you have Dom's take and we finish out these must starts, just got to talk about a few guys here. And that would be it on the sponsors. Dom, take it away, sir.
Yeah, so my thing with Blake Snell is he's always been a slow starter. His whole career, he's always been more of a second half guy than a first half guy. I know we're not at that second half yet, but hopefully Blake Snell is, maybe he's turning the tide a little bit earlier than normal. In his whole career, Blake Snell in the first half, 448 innings, a 4.12 ERA, and then in the second half, his whole career, 349 innings, a 2.68 ERA. And that first half was over 87 starts, second half is over 68 starts. So, as I said, hopefully Blake Snell's turning that tide a little bit early. That start against the Dodgers on May 6th was very, very encouraging. Matt read you off the stats. The whip was a 0.67. You love to see that. I think he goes out against that same Dodgers team. I think he's figured something out. I think it's a solid start. He may give up a couple of runs. Maybe Blake Snell's ERA this year is a little closer to a low to mid threes, but I think he can get that whip down. I think the strikeouts are going to be good. I think Blake Snell's going to turn it around. I think he finishes the year as a top 25 starting pitcher. So I have some confidence in Blake Snell. Moving on to somebody else I'm growing confidence in, it's Chris Sale, right? And I've kind of made this argument for Chris Sale a few times this year is that, guys, over the last, 2 seasons, how many innings has he thrown? Again, I know it's been under 100 innings. It might even be 60 innings. Let me just double check that number here for you guys just to make sure I'm on point with it. The last 2 years combined, Blake Snell has thrown a combined, not even 50, a combined 47 innings, not including this year. A combined 47 innings for Blake Snell. For Chris Sale, not Blake Snell. Sorry about that.
Confused me there, guy.
And the thing is, his last start was very, very good with yeah, no, I know. I was still on Blake Snell, but no, I'm talking about Chris Sale once again. I said, reiterate myself, over the last 2 years combined, 47 innings for Chris Sale, and his last start was super, super encouraging. Once again, in his last start, he went out against the Phillies. He struck out 10. He gave up 3 runs across 6 innings, got the win, a 1.33 whip. So he gave up a little bit more. But over his, last 4 starts, he's been a little bit better. He mixed in one real stinker at Baltimore. But on April 18th, he went out against Minnesota, 6 innings, 11 Ks, gave up a run, 0.83 whip. It's going to take a little bit of time. He's had a lot of time off over the last 2 years. I think Blake Snell, why do I keep saying Blake Snell? Chris Sale, keeps that strikeout rate up. I think the ERA for, Chris Sale is going to be, very, very stellar. He's done it his whole career. His velocity isn't really down at all. If anything, he ramped it back up in that last start. I think I saw he was hitting 99 miles an hour, which he hasn't done in quite a few years. So I think Chris Sale is in for, a big rest of the season once he really settles in and gets things going. I think he's also a great buy low candidate at the moment too. You don't want to give him too many more starts where he really gets going, and then you say, hey, I missed a nice buy low opportunity on Chris Sale.
Yeah, Chris Sale is one of those players where I'm just like this. He's been atrocious this season, but I like the matchup. I don't know if I'm calling a bounce back or a return like Dom is. He's a little bit more optimistic. He's still a truther. I'm a little bit more on the outside on Chris Sale. I'm out on Chris Sale this season, especially based off of the proof is in the pudding, but I like the matchup. The Cardinals are not the team we thought they were going into the season. They've been absolutely atrocious this season. They've only won, the last 2 out of we're going to say 10 games, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, Cardinals fans, if I'm wrong. But let's see here. So, yeah, they haven't won in the last 10 games, they've only won 4 games. So that's pretty bad. So Chris Sale is in favor with this matchup, and I think that this is the only reason why I'm willing to say, hey, I'm willing to roll Chris Sale out this week. Moving forward, we shall see. Let's put it that way, in my opinion. But let's move on here. Let's talk about Kyle Schwarber. Somebody everybody's probably, a little bit more hesitant on, probably what the hell. I know I got some comments on Instagram regarding Kyle Schwarber, and he's more of a wait and see. Here's the thing, though. Schwarber doesn't need good batting average to be good for fantasy. He's one of the few people I make an exception for because he's a career 230 hitter. That's his 236. No, I'm reading 230. I apologize. So, he could do pretty much like a Joey Gallo. He can bat 115 and have 3 bombs and 7 ribs and a few runs, just based off the fact that, hey, this is just what he does. So Schwarber's gone out. He's hit a bomb this on Sunday, which was not a great week, but over the last 2 weeks, he has 5 runs, 3 bombs, 6 ribs, batting 140. So, I mean, I'm starting him no matter what, not just because of what I paid for the draft price, but just based off of the fact that, one, he is who he is. 2, he's going to Colorado at the weekend too. So, the ball flies out of the park. It's getting a little warmer too, so we might get a little help from the weather to make that ball carry out of the stadium. So Kyle Schwarber is definitely a start for me this weekend.
Yeah, that's the big reason that I wanted to talk about Schwarber today is that matchup at Colorado. Going to Colorado, I think Schwarber, rights the ship here. He still has 8 home runs on the year, which is very, very nice. But I think that batting average is going to come up. I even think that he finishes the year hitting higher than the 213 he did last year. Schwarber, like Matt said, that batting average isn't going to blow you away. But in the second half last year, he, hit 232, which is a lot better than the 208 in the first half. I think he's going to really warm up and get into that groove, really start launching home runs, sooner than later. He was second in the league last year with 46 bombs, only behind Aaron Judge. So as Matt, once again, I hate to keep reiterating what Matt said, but he's 100% right in the sense of Kyle Schwarber doesn't have to have a great batting average to be a great fantasy player. The RBIs are going to be great. Home runs are going to be great. Runs are going to be solid. And, the batting average isn't going to be great. And he doesn't really steal bases. Oh, actually, even though he did steal, I know he stole a few bases. He actually stole 10 bags last year. I don't think he really approaches that again. But you know what? Kyle Schwarber is definitely at least a start for this weekend at Colorado. But you know what, Matt? This last guy is your boy. So why don't you take the reins on him and, talk about our last start guy here.
All right. I wasn't sure if you were going to let me have him. I'm actually excited for this. Thank you. Mr. Anthony Santander, the bank himself.
Take him, brother.
I'm loving the bank. I called the bank and I said I need to make a withdrawal on some home runs. And that's exactly what he's been doing. Last week was a great week. He had 7 runs, 3 bombs, 9 ribs, batting 433. He is a streaky bat. So right now the streak is hot and I'm playing him every single which way I humanly can. Anthony Santander is looking like he's on that bounce back. I saw it coming last week when I started looking at his last 10 games leading up to, going in that week, and he had a hit in every game but 3, which tells me that this guy's about to explode, and that's exactly what happened last week. And I rolled him out against everybody last week, and it got me a lot of fun stats. But what I think for him going into this weekend against his matchups against Tampa Bay, only one more matchup, and that's tomorrow when you're listening to this, and then Pittsburgh at home. I think that this is a great matchup for him. Pittsburgh pitching has seemed to have been dying off now. So there's nobody really in that lineup that I'm truthfully scared to roll a bat out against. So Anthony Santander should be able to, put his ATM card in and make another withdrawal for the home run skis going into the weekend. So Anthony Santander is a bona fide 100% start this weekend.
Yeah, Mr. Santander, the bank himself. I love the matchup against the Pirates. Pirates are 3-7 over the last 10. Seems like the Pirates are finally coming back down to life. So, Santander's, going to go out there and he's going to do great. I just love that little stretch he had from May 2nd to May 7th across all of those games in that time period. He had 2 hits in every single one of those games. I agree with Matt in the sense of, Santander's a streaky bat right now. The streak is hot, so definitely ride the wave and make sure he is in your lineups for, the time being until, he slows back down again. Then you could sub him back in, sub him back out. But he's a great, utility bat, I would say, in most leagues. And, in 5-man outfielder league, he makes a great, 3rd, 4th outfielder in those types of leagues where it's super deep. But the bank, Anthony Santander, as Matt said, bona fide start until, things get, a little bit worse. And who knows, maybe Santander just keeps things rocking and rolling through, the whole season and, has a big, big breakout year as a 28-year-old. But guys, that's all for today. As we wrap things up here, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Check out our website if you already haven't. And thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Be sure to look out for a new episode tomorrow featuring, a lot of players to stash and must add to your watch list. But until then,
peace.